Signore e signori, buonasera. Welcome. Benvenuti, bentornati alla Casa Italiana Zerilli-Marimò. Tonight we have Fred Plotkin talking about opera. As I always remind you, it's the most successful and longest lasting series here at the Casa, for some reason. Yes, please. And talking about records and numbers, we were just thinking with Fred that he has had more than 60 guests here at the Casa for his series. And he just turned 201 episodes of Fred Plotkin on Friday. That is the radio program that he has on Idagio Radio that you can easily access on the internet or wherever you get your podcast. So he's a man of big numbers. He's a great friend of the Casa and a passionate lover of anything Italian, and that's why it's always a pleasure to welcome him back. And as always, I'm not going to take away from Fred the pleasure of presenting his own guest. Just allow me to welcome him very, very warmly. He's doing great things, and especially right now, he's on the stage of the Metropolitan with La Forza del Destino. I think they're going to talk about that as well, but I don't know. And I'm going to sit and listen. But please welcome Brian Jagde and Fred Plotkin. Thank you.
So, welcome. Since we're family, I can say to you that I'm having a dental situation. So, those of you in the first row, if I have to say something like, Sassari is in Sardinia, my apologies. But welcome all of you, and welcome to those of you watching at home around the world. Fred Plotkin is always happy to be back at the Casa Italiana Zerilli-Marimò. I'm working on next season. We'll have wonderful guests. I want you to know that we have, after tonight, 2 more guests. We have Angel Blue on March 27th and Lydia Bastianich on April 30th. Talking about music, and I'll get into food with her a bit, because why not? But tonight I want to welcome Brian Jagde. Brian is a New Yorker. Not everybody that we've had here is a New Yorker, and I'm always very happy to have New Yorkers because this is New York. And he's one of the world's leading tenors. I heard him last night at the Met in La Forza del Destino. I've heard him in many things. He has carved a very particular path of repertory that I want to talk to him about tonight. And we're also going to reveal other things about him that you may not know. So please welcome Brian Jagde.
Thank you.
So, Julian, by the way, say hello to Julian. Please welcome Brian by playing selection number 1.
Giunge al cielo adesso, l'universo questo peso, io mi vengo giubilar. C'è che t'agita, presso il giorno, allungora 1000 inciampi, tua dimora amar, e tanto penetrar. Pronti destrieri di Giane a te un sacerdote ne aspetta l'ara, vieni d'amore in sen ripara, che Dio dal cielo benedirà. E quando il sole numerigna di mia rega e stirpe signore, il mondo in ogni del suo sposio diletta, sposio diletta ne troverà.
Ritarda l'ora,
Su vieta fretta,
ancor sospenti,
Eleonora,
ti man,
che parli,
che prego aspetta,
ti man.
di mani si partirà. Una volta il Padre mio, povero Padre, vedermi zio, e tu contento di verne sei, sì, perché bravi, e perché te, anch'io, tu sai, t'amo e tanto, e son felice al cielo, quanto gonfio di gioia il cor, restiamo, sì, mia mano, io t'amo, Alvaro, io t'amo.
Gonfiai di gioia il cuore e lagrimi come un sepolcro tua mano è gelida, tutto comprendo, tutto, signora.
Alvaro,
Eleonora, io sol saprò soffrire, tolga il Dio che passi miei per debolezza segua, sciolgo ai tuoi giorni, le nuziali tenerezza del vero per noi, segnal di morte. Se tu, com'io, non m'ami, se tu, com'io, non m'ami, sei pentita,
sotto, col cuore, con la vita.
Questo cor che t'ama, finché mi batta un palpito far pagonito abrama, io sono l'immutabile desio per me sarà.
si segua più.
A noi il fato
Andiamo più.
o non potrà, o non potrà. Mi segue, andiamo, andiamo, a non rivire, a non potrà. Mi segue, andiamo, rivireci, a non potrà, no.
Scendono le scale.
Partiamo, mi segue, andiamo, rivireci, il fatto non potrà.
The torture begin.
Julian, set up number 4, please. So, Brian,
Yeah.
your category of tenor, if we are to categorize, because it's an Italian style, if it were Germanic, it would be called a Helden tenor,
Maybe. Yeah.
maybe. A heroic tenor. And this is the designation that's often given, un tenore eroico. But the characters that you play, these heroic Italian tenors, the way I describe them, they often have a lot to bear, a lot on their shoulders. They're heroes, but they're heroes who are very put upon. And usually it doesn't end well for them or the woman they love.
Or anybody else around them, for
Right.
that matter.
And the whole style of performance, the way the music is written, is very different from, let's call it, a lyric tenor.
Very different. Yeah.
And you, in your career, sort of went straight to heroic without stopping at lyric, without stopping at little boyfriend tenors,
Yeah.
and really into the heroic deep end of the pool.
Yeah.
And that's not typical, or am I mistaken?
No. Normally, people. I mean, I also switched to tenor quite late. I was designated as a baritone, kind of misdiagnosed as a baritone for many years. From when I started studying in college, I had never taken a voice lesson before, and so that's what they taught me to do, and they made me a baritone. So I believed them. They're the experts, so that's what you do. And it was years went by of me auditioning as a baritone, and I think I skipped over a lot of the earlier tenor rep because of that. I missed out on singing some of my favorite roles. Like I wish I got to sing, in Lucia. That would have been just an amazing opportunity to sing that kind of repertoire. But by the time I switched, my voice was already matured to a certain level, and the degree of weight in the sound and the voice pushed me right into the Puccini world very quickly, and Verdi. Puccini and Verdi, quick.
But how does one switch
In reality,
from baritone to tenor? I mean,
I'm not sure I made a switch. I mean, the truth is I was probably always a tenor. The truth is I got a new teacher, and I did it because I was singing high C's in the bathroom and had no low notes. And it was after 10 years of studying, and I was like, maybe people are right. There had been people along the way. I would do auditions, and I was always singing really high baritone rep because it was really easy. And, I would sing Avant de quitter ce lieu as an audition as a baritone from Faust, and Avant de quitter ce lieu. Like I couldn't hit the low note, And I was still singing high C's, and many people said, Brian, maybe you're a tenor. And after many people said it, and my own, realization of it being true, I sought out a teacher who is still my teacher to this day, and I went into the room and I said, I'd like to find out if I'm a tenor. And he said, you're a tenor. Didn't hear me sing, just heard this speaking voice, and that was enough. And I was like, okay, great. 2 weeks later, I'm auditioning, I'm getting managed, I'm doing tons of auditions as a tenor, and it was just right. So for me, it wasn't like it was a switch in that I had to sit in the higher tessitura for a longer period of time. I had to learn how to do that. It was a lot of nerves, a lot of change happening very quickly. But I felt like I had a good instructor who was very hard on me, was making me learn things I had never learned before about the voice, which I think, is a shame and something that I think a lot of students coming out of college are getting as training, which I think should be talked about. But in general, I think I was lucky to find the path I found, and the switch wasn't a tremendous switch because, again, I think I was always a tenor.
But having lived in baritone land
Yeah.
for a while, is there a baritone mentality as opposed to a tenor mentality?
I think it kept me sane in a way. There is that. They say that tenors are crazy from all the high notes. Well, I didn't have to sing very many high notes as a baritone, so it worked out really well. But no, I think
But even the fact that
owning it.
the baritone plays roles that are different
very different.
in character, never mind the music, but the temperament, the relationship to the woman in the opera, than usually is the tenor.
You know, as a baritone, I was singing, roles that were mostly lighter and comedic almost. Not the villains yet, because I wouldn't have gotten to that stage of my job yet. But I think switching to the romantic lover, I think I always had that in me. I think I always had some of that in my personality and my stage presence. And I think I brought that to the tenor world. And again, it was not a major mental switch, just a believing in yourself to be able to do it, and a continuous work ethic to make it happen.
So what I'm going to do now is play Brian with Pretty Yende in rare music for his heroic tenor type. And I want to warn you, it's recorded from a not very good source. So we're not here judging the musical performance, but just to understand what this other kind of music is. Always by Giuseppe Verdi. So number 4, please.
From the Capodanno concert.
Viviamo nei lieti carici che la verezza infiora, e là, uccello, l'ora si ne rivolta. Viviamo cifreni che suscita l'amore, poiché quello cantare onnipotente va.
You want to describe the context?
So that was, I was very fortunate to do the Capodanno concert in Italy, in Venezia, and it was an honor, honestly, a real honor to be asked to do it. And of course, they always have this as a finale in the concert, and it's not my rep anymore. I sang it in 2 productions early on as a tenor, and that was it. And I don't look forward to singing Libiamo very much because of that, because people don't expect my type of voice for it. But I felt like actually I did a pretty good job there. So we just kept it rolling, just keep it going, because there's no time to stop in that piece. But it was a lot of fun, actually.
But that's what I want to ask you now. What kind of technique or challenges must be faced in this when you are a heroic tenor?
It's very challenging. You have to keep your voice, super lyric, while also presenting all the same, technical things that you do with everything you sing. So every time I'm singing, I sing in the same way. It's not like I change my technique based on the repertoire. There's a stylistic change, and I think Verdi in general writes in a beautiful way, because you always kind of ride the wave of Verdi, whereas Puccini, you're kind of sitting within all of it, and it's very heavy, and you're doubled by all the orchestration. So it's a very different type of thing. You need a lot more squillo. You need to cut through the orchestra more. Whereas in Verdi, you can sit on top of it. And luckily with this piece, again, you can ride that wave. And basically that's my whole thought process in this entire Libiamo, is to just ride the wave, stay down in my body, stay comfortable, stay secure in my technique, and deliver the text.
So I never thought I would ask this of someone. Is Verdi easier to sing than Puccini?
No, not by any means. I wouldn't say it was easier. It's just different. Like I said, I think if you're a tenor singing Calaf in Turandot, every single time you sing, all the wind and horns and instruments are doubled in your voice. So like they're playing the same notes that you're singing. If you're a soprano, at least you're an octave above, so you can carry over that. But as the tenor, you are in it, directly in it. So if you want to be heard, you really have to have the ability to have squillo in your sound. And that's what cuts through that orchestration. And luckily, I think I do. But yeah, it takes a lot more. It's just all about supporting the sound and trusting your technique.
So I was going to go in a different musical direction, but Julian, play number 7 now, please. And we can look if you want.
Sure. Oh, this is from the map.
Yeah.
Addio, fiorito asil, di Letizia e l'amor, sempre il mite suo sembiante, con strazio atroce vedrò. Il cor sincero ne s'agguaglia fiori bel ricorda e fui protetta
So now I get it. I never really thought about it. And I have you singing lots of Puccini here, but I just made a quick guess that that's the one that really doubles.
Oh, yeah.
I've never thought about this before that way, but you're competing with your own sound in the orchestra.
Same note, same octave.
Same notes, same octaves. Why would anyone ever think, a man ever sing Puccini?
It's tough.
Wow.
It's tough. I feel
Wow.
very fortunate that I get to do it, though. So.
But
And that was actually a decent recording.
it is. But what I mean is, I'm trying now to envision all the tenor roles in Puccini, and this concept of, if not quite competing with the orchestra, of having to coexist with it in a way that the soprano doesn't.
Yeah. We don't get a lot of credit, do we?
I mean, but
It's all Verismo music, actually.
talk about that more, though, because I for one, had never really envisioned that before because no tenors ever brought it up to me before.
I mean, it's not something I'm like, I don't frustrate myself with too much. But it is something that we do have to compete with. I mean, it's just part of the nature of the business. I think any tenor who sings the repertoire that I sing, especially the bigger, like more towards Verismo style Puccini, it gets even more complex too. I mean, and then you go into real like Verismo composers too, and it gets even more complex. I mean, you have Leoncavallo on here, but you know, it's challenging because it becomes even heavier. I mean, when I start doing Chenier someday, then I'm going to really even see how heavy that orchestration is and how thick. And it gets worse, actually. It gets harder. Yeah.
You sure you don't want to go back to being a baritone?
Not at all. No. I don't miss it. I don't miss it, especially because I wasn't a very good baritone. I like singing the rep I sing. I want to be the guy. I want to be the guy. I'm like the basketball player. You know, he wants the ball.
Throw me the ball. So, Julian, set up number 3, please, and we'll play it because this is a different Verdi, same soprano, Lisa Davidson, from, what, a year ago, not even?
Just this past summer.
This past summer. Don Carlo in London. Lisa Davidson, Norwegian, and she's one of these people everyone says, oh, well, Norwegian, so Wagner and Strauss. And she's been singing more Italian repertory lately. I love Wagner and Strauss, but I'm very happy with her in Italian. I was very impressed with her last night. Brian, I knew what to expect, and he was wonderful, but I didn't know what to expect with Lisa Davidson. I've not heard her sing Italian before.
It's quite a talent.
It's really quite something. So, but this is both of you last summer in what is often my favorite opera of all, Verdi's Don Carlo.
Beautiful opera.
So, Julian?
It's an audio.
Un detto, un sol, al cielo ratto, e poi sol domando e l'oblio e la vita.
Sì, fortessero l'io, ma quando in fronte a mare che nella morte uccide, sulla terra fiamminga, io vo che a lui si innalzi sublime censore, qual tenderetta, onorabile vago sogno m'arrise e sparmi che nell'affanno un rogo apparare che stringeva piacer di sangue tinto nel rio e si campi una me con il popolo che vuol che a me avanti tende si come rede forte la scrittura lui ne andrà beato e vincitore alzo pianto m'avrò e tornerò tutta la gente va bella.
E come salva?
Si vorrò per la mia morte più bella. Sì, la mia morte più bella. Appunto per me ti sciutterò la mia ma vinto si grandi l'onore in me
Time under tension.
I love that part.
That music is stunning.
So, for all the times I've listened to Don Carlo and studied Don Carlo and directed Don Carlo, I never noticed that the music under your singing, Carlo singing at this part, in a way, and her singing, sounds like the riddle scene in Turandot. The string section is,
Oh,
is
yeah.
that.
Wow.
And I never noticed that before tonight. And was Antonio Pappano conducting?
No.
Who was
He had
conduct-
done the original. This
Right.
was oh God, I'm not gonna remember right now. And okay, can't remember.
Okay. The
Bertrand.
Bertrand de Billy. Okay. The reason I ask is
Took me a
because you have an incredibly big year coming up. And one of the things you'll be doing is you'll be going with the Royal Opera to Japan.
Ah, yeah.
And you will be singing Calaf and Turandot, and Maestro Pappano is conducting.
Yes.
Ask him about that.
I will.
Because you'll be in Turandot. You'll be
Exactly.
in rehearsal. Listen to the music from Don Carlo. Just go back and you can play this yourself. And listen to that because it completely sounded like the riddle scene
How
to
about
me.
that?
I never noticed that before.
I love that music. God.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, you when one time Martina Arroyo sat here, and she's one of my dearest friends in opera, and she's very blunt about things, very charming, and she always says that what she did are big girl roles, and you sing with women who do big girl roles. It doesn't mean that you're big women necessarily,
No,
though some
just-
are, but these are big girls.
Yeah.
And so Lisa Davidson, Sandra Radvanovsky are two examples of these big girls who do Tosca and Turandot and very dramatic repertory and need someone who is at their level musically, dramatically, vocally. And you are the go-to person.
I guess I am.
You really are in the world.
I've-
Jonas Kaufmann sings this music somewhat, and there are other tenors who do, but you're really the one now. And how does that feel?
I feel honored every day to be able to do this. I mean, it's kind of it's a hard life. We do something that's very, very unique and very specialized, but there's reward with risk and with hard work ethic. And I think to be the guy that people call when they need someone to sing this repertoire is always a good thing. You always want to be that person. So I can't imagine it being any different. But I love being the guy for these women too, because I love working with them. I mean, Sandra and I get along so well. We're going to be in Japan this coming summer doing this Turandot as well as a duo concert together. And that's going to be fun. And I get to work with her next year a couple times. So yeah,
Well, I'm just looking at what you have coming up.
lots of stuff.
You, after singing a new production of La Forza del Destino at the Met, which, by the way, this Saturday will be seen worldwide in HD.
Yeah.
And if you're in Brooklyn, I'm lecturing before it at BAM. Then you fly to Italy, which, by the way, is your home, and we're going to get to that in a bit, to make your debut at La Scala as Torito with Elena Garancia, a big girl mezzo.
Yes.
And I can never pronounce his name. I want him to come here when he learns some English. A Martushin Enkabat.
Oh, he's
who is this
incredible.
Mongolian baritone who's fantastic.
Fabulous.
He's really a fantastic, I've heard him in Italy, fantastic singer. And never mind Elena Garancia and a Martushin Enkabat. As Mama Lucia, you have Elena Zilio.
Oh my God, I didn't even realize that.
Zilio must be 1,000 years old.
But she's
And
great.
She's the last sort of Huh? That's okay. Okay, you're 950. She's like the last standing old-style Italian mezzo-soprano who evokes the era of Ebestignani and Fedora Barbieri, and she's phenomenal. And Pappano uses her a lot in London. I've seen her more in England than I have in Italy. But she's a phenomenon, and I really hope that you'll get to know her.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because, and then you'll come back and you'll tell us about Elena Zilio. Garantia, great, but Elena Zilio.
No, she's incredible.
Yeah. And
It's a small role, but she can kill it.
she
I mean,
can
she will.
absolutely, Mama Lucia is
She's
her
a great
mother.
role.
Then you go from Milan to Parma
Yeah.
to make your debut at the Teatro Regio di Parma as Mario Cavaradossi in Tosca. And then you go on tour with the Royal Opera of London to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're back at the Met singing in Tosca with Sandra Radvanovsky and Bryn Tervel.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're in a new production at the Met of Aida as Radames with, there are two casts. Are you doing any with Angel Blue?
I don't think so. Oh no, wait.
You have
Some
Christina
of them
Nielsen
are.
and
Some
Angel
of them
Blue.
are, but it's
So
a
Angel
second
will be there.
cast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all right. And Elena Garantia again. And then you have Amonasdros. You have wonderful Amonasdros. One of them is Amurtevir Enkbat.
He's amazing.
And then, not Italian, but pretty fabulous. My favorite production at the Met is Queen of Spades by Tchaikovsky. It's a perfect production. I love the Madama Butterfly. There are others I love too. But this Queen of Spades is so remarkable. It's by Tchaikovsky. You're going to be with Sonia Yancheva and Violetta Urmana, talk about big girl singers. Not size, not at all, but
just
but
Big
presence.
roles. Yeah.
When she was here, when they were doing Attila at the Met, and I asked her, when you're singing and you look at Maestro Muti, she said, I don't look at Maestro Muti, he looks at me. And because we have this on video, you can see I'm not exaggerating at all. But it's really, Queen of Spades is a magnificent opera by Tchaikovsky. And the production is extraordinary, and you're not the title character, that's Violetta Urmana, but you're the protagonist. It's all about you,
Yeah.
in effect. And Sonia Yancha would be a wonderful, Lisa is the name of the character. Lisa Davidson made her Met debut as Lisa in this opera.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's just in a year to come.
That's right. And there's other things that haven't been announced before that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So, I mean, this is what I mean about in demand. And it's wonderful, but as you said, it can't be easy.
No.
How
It's not
do you-
easy for anybody.
How do you talk about that, if you would? How do you achieve balance? And by the way, Julian, set up number 11.
That's a good question. Balance is really important in anybody's life. I think any high-powered attorney would also have to find balance in their life, or a doctor would have to find balance in their life. I think anybody who does a very specialized job, a lot of their time gets put into doing the job, whether that means practicing or rehearsing or resting, because as a performer, I was on stage last night, and in between shows, I do very little to work my body up to make sure it's not exhausted by the time I get back on stage again. It's like being a football player. They play one match a week, and then they rest, and they practice, but practice not full on. And it's a different thing. It's just, it's about finding balance. I look to my family. I look to my friends. I go to the gym a lot. I work out. I make sure I keep myself in the best shape I can to do the job. And it's all about the job on a regular basis. And so trying to find little moments of respite between gigs is nice. But no, this is a dedication type of job. You have to dedicate yourself fully to it. There's no in between. There's this. I don't know how to say it in Italian because even though I can speak it pretty well, there was this phrase that a good friend of mine who's Italian told me. In fact, his father was an assistant conductor at the Met a long time ago, and he said you can't sit between two chairs because you're going to fall between them. You have to pick one. And the truth is, if you want to do something at a really high level, like the highest possible level, and dedicate yourself, you have to dedicate yourself wholly to it. You can't sit between. You have to sit on it and go for it. And that's it. It's all about that. No matter what job you're doing, no matter what passion you have. I mean, that's the life that I chose. So that's the life I'm living. And I love doing it. But it is a sacrifice. It is something that my family sacrifices for my entire family. I mean, I barely get to see my actual relatives that often. Luckily, I do come back to New York, where I also live. I live in Rome and in New York. I split time, And I work in Europe so much. I mean, 80% of my career is in Europe. So I'm constantly traveling over there. It's a sacrifice to do the job, but it's a sacrifice that in the end you feel like is worthy of it, especially when you hear this glorious music. I mean, I haven't listened to this Don Carlo excerpt, for instance, since it came out, and I hate listening to myself, I'll tell you right now. And because I can hear every little detail of things I should change or not do or do it again or whatever. And but when you're listening to it abstractly and trying to take yourself out of it for the moment, and you hear this incredible music that we're interpreting, because it's, we're not creating the art form, it's created. So our job as singers is interpreting this art that someone else made many years ago, that's been interpreted by hundreds of other people, I mean thousands of other people, and making it your own, and also taking from the past, and that's the job. And it's fun. It's fun to make it your own, and to get to experience it with other people, especially people you like working with. It's always nice to go to a project and see, I see basically the same 50 people around the world. There are hundreds and hundreds of other singers out there, but like generally speaking, I see about the same 50, 60 people. And it's nice to come back because those are our friends. Those are our like extended family that we create, because we don't get to see like I said, we don't get to see our own families as much. So there's a lot that goes into it. But again, if you love it enough, it's worth it.
So two thoughts. One is, when we had Ambrogio Maestri here, the great Italian baritone, we didn't have the problem of his sitting between two chairs. I got him a very big chair. And I got myself a bigger chair that night because I didn't want him to feel that he was in the big chair and I was in this chair. We had to find these chairs here and reinforce them, but
he's not quite Pavarotti's size, but
no, he's bigger. I knew
he's taller.
Luciano. He's taller. He's bigger. And the other thing is that you are like every guest I've had here, with one exception, that you don't like hearing your voice. You don't like listening to your performances. The only one who said, "Ooh, she's good," was Morella Freni. But Renato Scotto, don't play that, all of them, but Morella Freni, no, she's good.
Yeah. It's just one of those things, when you're highly technically oriented and your brain is in that mode, you hear all the little things that this is that last thing you sing in the night, that Don Carlo, for instance, the last thing. It's after a very long 5-act version of an opera that was my debut in the role. And the only time I've gotten to sing it, and I don't have it on the books again. And I wish I could do it again. I wish that somebody would book it. But if you're booked out for 4 to 5 years, by the time someone would book you for it, you might not be right for the role anymore. So it's just one of those things that I hope I get to do again. But when you're listening to it, you're analyzing all the things that you worked on and you didn't do right or whatever in a live performance. And I guess that's also part of it, though. I've coming to accept that more. Something that's coming into my life lately is that this thought process of, I think earlier on I was highly technical, always thinking about how to sing right, how to be perfect on stage, and always that. And I'm doing that, but I'm also more technically efficient and prepared now than I was when I was younger. So I can let go a little, and I can be in the moment more. And that's what's giving me more drive and more passion these days, is to not think so much about the mistakes and the things, because actually sometimes the mistakes are some of the best parts about a live performance. We're not making a recording. We're not making a professional recording. This is being broadcast live to people over the internet. And God only knows, what that sounds like. I'm on stage, I can't tell. All I can do is give the best performance I can in the moment. And that's actually really fulfilling.
So a couple of years ago, you and I were chatting, and we're still in COVID times from my point of view, but in even more COVID times.
Yeah.
And on my Friday show, and I asked you about, let's now call them big boy tenors, to give me an example of someone you thought was very good and perhaps not appreciated. And you mentioned a tenor. I'm not going to say his name. We're going to hear him now sing. And then we'll talk about what makes this performance great, and then we'll tell you who it was. So Julian, number 11, please.
Recitar mentre preso dal delirio non so più quel che dico e quel che faccio eppure due per sforzati sei tu forse un tu sei pagliaccio vesti la tuba e la faccia in farina la gente paga e rider vuole quei serchin in vola colombina ridi tagliato e ognuno applaudirà muta in lazzi la sposa ed il pianto in una smorfia il singhiozzo e il dolor ridi pagliaccio sul tuo
So, Julian, you'll then set up 12 and 13. We'll follow it right away, but we're going to talk first about this particular tenor. We're not going to name him yet.
Okay.
What was great about this tenor?
God. I mean, I wish I could have heard him live.
I did in La Forza del Destino.
Here?
I worked on that production.
Yeah.
That was my first Forza, was 1983.
I
I
mean,
was
he only came in the
27, and it was Leontine Price and this man.
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, I came upon this tenor because my teacher played this tenor for me because I'd say like 70% of my technique is based on the same technique of this tenor. And I aspire to be as legato as this tenor every day and twice on Sunday. It's just the most legato, gorgeous, colored instrument. And the recordings don't even give you, supposedly, as much of the trumpety sound that he had in the house. The amount of, talk about squealo. I mean, everybody who talks about having heard him in the house says that it was just powerful and pingy and ringing while also having this scudo color. But I mean, for me, it's just one of those people who, you know, he's also known for having horrible nights. He, you know, back in the day, there wasn't everybody with a cell phone who could tell every person in the world when someone cracked You know, you were in one theater and those 1,000 people saw it, and they accepted when that happened, and you could keep going or not. Up to you. Sometimes he decided to cancel. In fact, a lot of times he was known to be quite neurotic, but when he was on, it was worth it. I mean, it was just one of those things that you wanted to go and find out if it was going to be the night. It was going to be incredible. You know, and that's what we need. We need that still, and we need that kind of feeling in the opera world today, where everybody's listening to recordings and micromanaging every single note instead of really going just to experience that moment in time. Not everybody. We're human. You know, we're not going to be perfect every night, and he certainly wasn't. But when he was, my God.
I'm interested to see by a show of hands how many people think this man was American. How many people think this man was German? How many people think this man is Spanish? Well, that's not the same thing, Spanish or Italian. How many people think this man is Italian? So we've seen very few hands here. Was he Portuguese? Or was he Argentine? Was he Korean? He was Italian. And I think you can tell that by his use of the language, for starters.
Yeah.
Even if you don't speak Italian, I do. But even if you don't, why, Brian, does this sound so Italian to me and certainly to you, I think?
No, he's Italian.
He is Italian. But there are Italian singers who don't sound Italian, who don't use the Italian language italianamente, as I once heard a conductor say. And they're more generic.
I guess that's true.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has a different way of saying. I mean, listen, if things changed a lot when Pavarotti became famous and his recordings came out, I think people started thinking of Italian in a different way. But if you go back, you can hear all the different famous Italian, I mean, Delmonico, and you hear all these great. They all sang very differently in their own language, so it's hard to explain what that Italian is, because for each of them it was.
Richard Tucker, in a way, sounded more Italian.
Yeah, he's a New Yorker.
Did Mario Delmonico, I think.
I mean, to some people's ears, right? And Delmonico, he would sing open A vowels on O's when they're supposed to be O's all the time.
Yeah.
And I think it was accepted. It was broadly accepted. Things were different, you know? Actually, I think the job's harder now than it might have been then. And the expectations are higher now than it was then. And that's weird, right? Because if all these great singers who we have so much respect for could sing an open A vowel on on a word that was in an O, and it was fine, how come it's not today, right? You start to think, well, gosh, why could they do it? You know, why can't I do that? It would be easier if I could do that. But no, that's just not the way it is. So it's part of our job now to try and get as close to it as possible. It's harder for an American, I think. A lot of times I wasn't raised speaking Italian. You know, it's not in my DNA. In fact, I have 0 Italian in me. I have 1.6% Italian in me, actually. I did a DNA
More than
test.
I have, yeah.
I did a test, and I think it was from the Viennese Austrian Empire, really, not Italian. So, but anyhow, no, I mean, it's just one of those things. For me, the thing that sits with me the most about his voice is there's no break of the line. I mean, the line is just the most purely even legato I've ever heard any tenor sing with, ever. And to me, it's the most beautiful thing. Who is it? Giuseppe Giacomini.
Yeah.
And he's just one of those guys who, you know, he was big. I mean, he wasn't not famous. He wasn't unknown, but he wasn't Pavarotti. He didn't have that kind of level of career. He didn't have that kind of level of fame.
He wasn't Carlo Bergonzi, to name another Italian from the same era.
From his contemporary, exactly. He just didn't reach that pinnacle, but, I mean, he's widely respected.
Right, or Delmonico or Di Stefano. He only died a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and he was singing until he had a stroke.
Right.
At 80 or 78.
78.
He had he could still sing with that technique, despite, I mean, obviously a wobble at that age, but that's not abstract and abnormal at 78 years old.
So why do you think he didn't have more acclaim?
I don't know. I think, you know, certain people were found at different times by different people. Some people were pushed. I mean, certainly, once you get into the later age of Domingo and Pav, like you're talking about press machines and recording contracts that are just pushing people out to fame. I mean, we don't even have that today. It's not. It's actually regressed because recordings are just wildly free for the most part in classical music. So it's a different time, different era. But in that time period, first of all, I think there were probably a lot of great singers and a lot of people who were performing locally that didn't get recognized fast enough. He was recognized. I mean, he had a good career. Just he was known mostly in the later part of his career and for the heavier repertoire that he sang, which is also pretty respectable. I mean, Tabarro and Fanciulla and Pagliaccio and Otello, Forza.
And I'm not being catty here at all, but
No.
I'm really not. He was not a handsome man in any way.
That might have been it.
And I think that from casting directors' points of view, that defeated him. Because we say now that you have to be handsome in addition to being a great singer to get a career, or beautiful, Lisa Davidson, whatever, and that people like Pavarotti and Joan Sutherland would not have had their careers. I don't agree with that. I think that Pavarotti and Sutherland would have a career at any time. But Giacomini really was not a handsome man at all. He wore very thick glasses. He was not necessarily physically charismatic on the stage, but he was vocally charismatic on the stage in a remarkable way. And when Leontine was doing her last Forza at the Met, which she envisioned as being her last performance, she had to be brought back for Aida and persuaded to do that, and it was James McCracken. But these were going to be her last performances. She said, I want Giacomini because he can sing that music.
God, could he?
So
I have a famous story about him.
Yeah,
if you
go
want to hear
ahead.
it. I mean, not a
Of course.
famous story, an unfamous story that might become famous
Yeah.
now. One of my managers, when he was young, was in Verona, where he was supposed to sing Pagliaccio, and it was one of the nights where he was freaking out. And he's in his dressing room, and he's talking to his wife, and he says, Maria, non posso cantare stasera. I can't sing tonight. I can't do it. And she says, Giussi, e 30 milioni lire, canta. and if you don't understand, it's, for the world, it's 30 million lira, or 30,000 lira, or whatever, and you better sing. And he says, sì, sempre così, la stessa cosa. Io soffro, I suffer, and you take the money. And he went on and sang.
by the way, Brian's wonderful wife is here tonight.
Yeah.
And you don't do that.
No,
Not at all.
no,
Jenna,
it's not the same.
Jenna is as accomplished in her way in the opera world as Brian is. And I've known you for quite a long time, even though you're only 22 years old. And
I married
is at Adagio, which is where I do my program, and is very instrumental in terms of bringing opera to the world. And you do that incredibly well with Kate Pizzaroni and a
Opera
few
for
other
Peace.
people. Opera for Peace. Talk about Opera for Peace then.
This is a really awesome project,
Yeah.
I think. Started by my wife, Jenna Wolf, and Julie Lagouger, and a few other people originally. And it's kind of multi-tiered. It's the first organization of its kind in that it's worldwide. It helps young singers. There's an academy that they've started where they bring young singers from all over the world. I mean, all over. I mean, there was a girl last year from Iran. There are people from many different parts of Africa who get to come. All over. People who don't necessarily have the opportunity to get the training they need and can come and have a 2-week intensive free of charge where they're flown in, housed, and taught by the leading singers today who are out there working, and coaches who are out there working today, and press managers like my wife who does that as well, and get a good experience, and then possibly even from there have that connection and that backing for future possibilities of work. And it's really started off it started off during COVID, by the way, and so it was a slow start, and now it's really rolling. I'm really proud of the work I get to do as an ambassador of it. I get to do master classes with the kids when I have time, and the other part of it that I find is something that I think that is still in the works. it's in process is the idea of peace around the world and trying to collaborate with other peace organizations. And then that's something that they're still working on. And it's like I said, it's in its first few years, but it's going really well. And I'm really, really proud of the work they're doing.
Julian, I'd like you to play number 12, a young tenor named Pavarotti, and then number 13, a young tenor who's right here.
Si può morire, si può morire.
interesting you chose that one, that version.
Why?
Well, because I can tell you right now, he probably was unhappy with a lot of that afterwards if he listened to it.
Why?
Because there's some moments in there that he undersupported for sure. First of all, he's the king of shadow vowels. That's what I meant by he changed the Italianità. Like you hear every enda, handa, hinda, enda, and you didn't hear that with Giacomini. You would never hear that. You know, it's a totally different thing. But no, I think he still gave a great performance, and that's what mattered. The gentleness was sometimes connected to his support and sometimes completely disconnected. And he also, at the end of phrases, and he did this a lot, actually. I'm highly analytical of these tenors. I don't know if you can tell. But no, at the end of a phrase, he'll drop. He'll drop the sound or drop the support. And it's something that he started doing more, actually, later in his career, especially when he started doing those big outdoor concerts with microphone and stuff, which actually changed him a little bit technically, I think, and not for the better towards the end of his career.
And now let's hear you.
Yeah, let's hear me. This is, that was
Now.
from a recording session. Yeah.
And by the way, that's the role you're going to be making your La Scala debut in next month.
Yeah.
Why did I pick the two pieces of music I picked?
You tell me, Mamma.
No, not Mamma. There's no Mamma in Elisir d'Amore.
Well, he says Ma.
Okay.
But he actually did it. He didn't do a double. I don't know if you heard that one time.
He did not do it. No, they're both about wine.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
And I have a very dear friend in San Francisco who's probably watching tonight named Harvey Steinman, editor-at-large at The Wine Spectator. And Harvey is a brilliant, intelligent man in that his three favorite things, apart from his wonderful wife, are opera, wine, and baseball. So he's solid in my book, too. And he did an article about Brian Jagde about 6 years ago. And I knew of Brian by then. I had heard him. I didn't get to know him yet. You are about two grapes away from having been in the wine world instead of the opera world. Talk about that.
Yeah. So I first of all, my mom's a chef, retired now, and I grew up in the food industry pretty much most of my life because of that. I mean, my first official job that wasn't like raking leaves or mowing lawns or whatever was bussing tables in a restaurant. And I waited tables for most of my adult life until I could quit to start singing officially. In fact, I still was doing it while being a young artist, even in San Francisco. In New York, I would work, and then I would go out and do the Young Artist Program and come back and work. And I did that a lot in Manhattan. I worked even right around the corner. It was at 12 East 12th Street. I worked at Gotham Bar and Grill at one point in time.
I'm sure you served me and Stefano one night.
I'm sure. I got to serve a lot of people. I served Ed Koch. And, I worked there, and I worked in a lot of fine dining restaurants over the time.
Including one called A Voce.
One called A Voce, ironically enough.
Boys.
Yeah,
By
and
boys.
it was started by a chef named Andrew Carmelini, who now has like an empire of restaurants, and just opened up his first fine dining restaurant, which I'm looking forward to going to on Fifth Avenue. But that was the first restaurant he got to make the menu himself. It was owned actually by the Mark Corporation, which used to own Landmark and other things. And so it was run by a bunch of French people, actually. But he was the chef, and the food was incredible. And I was working with at that time, there were maybe like 200 grand sommeliers in the world from France that existed. And one of them was the sommelier of the restaurant. And I showed an interest in wine. And over the years, earlier in my restaurant career, I had studied wine very intensively. In fact, I was very lucky to have been forced to take wine courses every week at a restaurant I worked in Hastings, New York, when I was going to college at Purchase College. So I went to Hastings on the Hudson, and I would serve in a restaurant called Harvest on the Hudson, which still exists today. And they gave me wine courses every week. And I learned all about the regions and what grapes grew where and the profiles of the wines. And so I really fell in love with that aspect of the business. And it was really fun selling wine to the patrons of restaurants because I had the knowledge to say, this would go really good with this. This would go really good with this. And it's nice when you're trying to date people too, because then you can always choose the right wine when you're going out to dinner. And it was very helpful. Sorry, honey. And I won her over with a dog, so don't even, yeah. And who's named Cavaradossi, by the way. And we call him Cav. Anyhow.
As opposed to Pavarotti.
So, exactly. I believe I was still a baritone at the time. That was the last year I was a baritone. I was working in that restaurant. And I was still taking lessons with other teachers and going away for young artist programs and coming back and still not having any real success. And I got offered an assistant sommelier position, which is a grunt job. I mean, it's 80 hours a week of stocking wine. I mean, but I would have learned a lot. But I could have done that. And I had a choice in that moment. I had a choice. Like I could spend 80 hours a week in a restaurant learning that business and become a sommelier, or I can continue to learn how to sing and do that as a career and keep wine as the hobby and not have singing be the hobby. And I chose to sing. So, yeah, I didn't become a sommelier. Thank you. No, but I still appreciate great wines, of course. And I love still studying it if I can on my spare time.
But you are among the few singers I know who actually drinks wine.
Mm-hmm.
Singers drink, but not necessarily wine. And there are a few reasons for that. And I mean, I've cooked for many, many singers, and inevitably I have to find a different beverage because they won't drink wine. Why is that?
I don't know. I think people are neurotic about all kinds of things in this business. I mean, it's very common to become susceptible to certain things. I don't drink before I sing, no matter what I'm drinking. I wouldn't drink alcohol before I sing. So alcohol dehydrates you no matter what it is, whether it's wine or bourbon, right? But if you're responsible, then wine should be okay. There are certain things in wine that can affect you in ways that you don't want. But if you don't,
acid reflux.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can get that from any alcohol, really.
Yeah.
Any alcohol consumption, any food. I mean, so much food can give you acid reflux. So it's really, I take so much acid reflux medication, you wouldn't even believe it. So we're all on it. We're all on it because we all have it. Because actually, the problem with opera singing in reality is it has very little to do with also just the food in your diet. It also has to do with what we do for a living. Because this is going to be a little technical, pardon me, part of what we do is our diaphragms go down and expand down so that we can take in a certain amount of air. We don't need tons of air to sing, but we have to have that expansion while we're singing. So there's this lower part of our body that's always out and always expanded, and that's work. And there's a little sphincter that closes off your stomach from the rest of your throat. And when you do that constantly,
pyloric sphincter.
Thank you. When you constantly do that, you weaken that muscle. So overnight, when you're sleeping, acid will inevitably come up into your vocal cords, which is it's just not a pleasant way to have to sing on chords that have been burned all night long, you know? So we do everything in our power to avoid that, whether it's sleeping in an elevated position or, I mean, all of the above. Medication, eating as healthily and responsibly as possible, not within 4 hours of bedtime, again, sacrifices, not drinking wine every night. I don't get to do that. You know, it's just part of my life. Sad, but true.
I've known many singers who won't drink wine because of the tannins.
Sure.
Now, they drink tea, which has tannins. They drink coffee, which has some tannins. But they don't drink wine because they say the tannins and the alcohol is what makes it lethal. I can tell you, and you and I can talk about this after, is I've gotten many singers off their Pepsid and their meds by changing their diets. This doesn't mean weight loss. It means what you eat. And because it's possible. Because I do a lot of public speaking and standing, and it's the same movement, but not with the same support. And I don't often use microphones. And you just have to learn how to do that. And it is a whole regime that you have to do. And I, too, am very stinting on my wine consumption. I recently went to a wine tasting, the Tre Bicchieri Gambero Rosso, which is a big deal event held every year. And there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of wines. I only tasted 8. And I spat them all out. And that's part of the profession. People don't know is that if you're a wine taster, knowledgeable sommelier, you're a big spitter.
Yeah.
You have to be, because you cannot ingest that, not just because it goes to your head, but the acidity in the stomach. Finally, because it's been wonderful to have you here, and I want to respect your time because you have a big broadcast coming up and a very schedule. You and Jenna have moved to Italy.
Yeah.
You're in Italy. You're near Rome, or not
Very
in
close.
Rome, but near
30
Rome.
minutes
yeah.
from Rome.
And what's it like living in Italy? I'm jealous.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, the impetus was for many reasons. Like I said, 80% of my work was in Europe, and we were traveling back and forth and back and forth. The cost alone of flying back and forth to New York between gigs, every gig, to work with my teacher or whatever, it's costly. The job is very costly. It takes 3/4 of my gross income to do this job, and that's just part of the thing that you do. So when we decided to move to Europe, there was a lot of reasons. First of all, there are Schengen laws that only allow you to be in the Schengen zone, which is most of the places, basically everywhere I work in Europe, for 90 days out of every 180 days. And it's very easy to go over that. And it's not like you can reset it by leaving and going back. It's cumulative over the days. So every day from now back 180 days, if I'm over 90 days, if I ever got caught, or if ever I did overstay my welcome and get caught, I could be banned for 3 years and fined. And so that's a major concern, actually, because things are getting really electronic and a lot more regimented, and the world is a little crazy. A lot of stuff going on right now, and so people are being really strict, and so we have to be smart about that. So part of the reason to move there was the cost of living is about 1/3 of the cost of New York. I mean, we have a house with a pool, and we're 7 minutes from the beach, and it costs less than an apartment here by it's 1/3 the cost of an apartment here. So that's one major reason. We were going to look in other countries for that because there are easy ways to get passports, like in Portugal or other places, but I speak enough Italian and I work in Italy, and so we found a beautiful home there, and we're very lucky to have found it. And yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, we've made great friends there. You know, everybody, when you go to Italy, if you tell somebody you're an opera singer, they are over the moon to know you. You know, in America, it's something that we don't think of. I mean, I'm an American boy who grew up thinking I was going to be anything but an opera singer, right? I mean, it's not something that even comes across your mind as a young American kid. And in Italy, it's still visible. It's still there. It's still part of their culture. It's a little less than it used to be, but it's still there. You get in a taxi and you tell someone you're an opera singer, "Oh, grande!" Oh, you know, they're just so happy to know you, maestro. Esatto. I'm like, that's the conductor, okay, but I'm happy. I'm happy to be called. You know, well, it's fine. But you know, the truth is, it's a whole different world. In Europe, in general, there's an appreciation for culture. All these countries have cultural administrators. You know, we don't even have like a cultural attaché here. That, you know, we don't have anything like that here in America, and it's really depressing and sad that we don't embrace the arts as much as we should here. And it's just so nice to see such a great turnout at this, because you know we really need you. We need all of you. We need all of your passion and your love for the field, and if we don't have it, it dies. It dies, and we don't want that. We don't want that.
I've noticed in doing this Fred Plotkin on Friday show, there are a lot of Americans who now live in Rome.
It's a
who are in
great
the
city.
opera profession.
It's such a great city.
And it's a wonderful city, but I guess my surprise is that when I was living in Italy for opera work, I lived in the north. And Rome was not where we would ever think to go. There was no work really in Rome. But now there's a community of opera singers in Rome who are Americans.
Ah.
And therefore, there must be more going on. It's a great airport and there's great food, obviously.
I mean, you can get anywhere by train, you know. So
Yeah.
it's like San Carlo is very close.
Naples, yeah.
And Milano is not that far, and
And Parma,
Verona
Verona.
and I am singing in Rome more, which is nice because I can live in my house and take a train and go to work.
Yeah.
It's
But
quite
we're
lovely.
very happy that you're doing so well there. But I'm very happy that the Met has you for 3 things next season.
I feel very embraced
which
by
is
them.
really terrific because, yes, Italy is marvelous, obviously, but you're a New Yorker.
I'm a New Yorker.
And I began this conversation by saying it's not often we have New Yorkers. Martina Roy was a New Yorker, but there are not that many who were born and grew up here and fashioned opera careers, major big boy, big girl opera careers. And Brian Jagde is one of them. So you're always welcome here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you. That was fun.
Easy peasy.
Yeah. How does this turn off? I don't know how this turns